Growing up, I always was given the impression that if your ancestors came to America on the Mayflower, that you were a better breed, better stock, the great old New England stock that founded this country and brought us our great values. Heard that all my life. The fact of the matter is that the Puritans that sailed here in November 1620 and settled in Massachusetts were good people in many ways. They were strong, they were resolute, they underwent a great deal of hardship to found the colony, and in the end, they succeeded. However, they were just humans like you and I, and not particularly high class or noble when they were in England. In fact, they were middle class and lower middle class individuals. And they weren't all Puritans. Oh, what's a Puritan? Most of us don't really understand that. They weren't the Pilgrims. They weren't the people with the black hats and the big shotguns chasing turkeys. The Puritans literally were a separatist religious group that wanted to purify the Christian church. At that time, the Reformation of the Catholic Church had just begun, and you pretty much had three choices. You could follow the teachings of some of the European reformers, such as Luther or Calvin, or the Church of England, and they were English, in which Henry VIII had split from the Catholic Church, principally so he could get a divorce. They didn't really change the worship and the practices of the Catholic Church very much. But the Puritans wanted to purify the church. They wanted to cast out the statues and the candles and the incense and the robes and the elaborate ceremonies that had grown over the years within the Catholic Church and simplify it, seeing the Bible literally living a completely different lifestyle. And they'd been persecuted for this in England. It hadn't worked out for them very well at all. They tried Holland. That didn't work out. So now they're sailing for America. But not everybody on the ship was a Puritan. Some of them were what they called strangers. There were people traveling with them for other reasons than seeking religious freedom. There were the sailors on the ship, of course, that manned the ship. And there were some other individuals who were bond servants. They were coming because they had exchanged, or agreed to exchange, 7 years worth of work for passage to the New World, a chance to start their lives over again. They had different motives. Some adventure, money, profit, chance to start a new life. Others, because they kind of needed to get out of England. And one of those families was the family of John Billington. They didn't get along very well at home, and escaping was a good opportunity. So John became a bondservant for one of the Puritan individuals who paid his passage and guaranteed him that he would get food and clothes and be cared for the next 7 years for free work, pay him back, and then he'd be free in the New World. And so off he came. But right away there was trouble. The Billington family did not fit in on the ship. They were, for one thing, they were Catholic, and so religiously they were as far apart from the Puritans as you could get, and they didn't seem to fit in very well in other ways. Their behavior was often obstructive and difficult. They got to the New World, things didn't get better. That first winter was terrible, and half the people died of disease or starvation. It was a tough time. And John Billington and his family didn't make it any easier. There were several occasions in which his wife and children even were brought before the governor or the courts for various offenses. And the governor called them the most profane family in the colony. Eventually, they settled and began to farm. And John got into more trouble. He had a neighbor he didn't particularly like, a young man named Newcomb, and he began to argue with him. About the second or third time he argued with him, he killed him. And he did it by ambush, hiding in the woods, and shot him with a rifle. Now, in those days, rifles weren't the simple affair that we have today, that you can just grab one and shoot it. It was a very deliberate act. They were matchlock muzzle loaders, and it took 3 minutes to load them. And you had to use a burning match to actually set the gun off. And it wasn't something you did at the spur of the moment in hot blood. He definitely killed him in cold blood by ambush. And I think that many historians believe that he thought he might get away with it, or at least with only a minor punishment. There were so few men needed to work and defend the colony. And they had never executed anyone. They had other punishments. people being so many lashes with a whip or put into the stocks, but not in John's case. In John's case, to his surprise, he was tried by a jury and he was condemned to die and was killed in a public hanging. I'm sure he died with surprise on his face. He thought he could get away with it, but he didn't. And he went down in history as the first murderer in the American colonies and the first person to be hung in the American colonies and the first person to kill someone by use of a firearm in the American colonies. So John went down in history, and not for some very good reasons. He's largely forgotten. But today we'll remember him, John Billingstone,